Okay guys, so I wanted to walk you through what I'm doing here with my dessert setup. And now I got everything out so you could kind of see everything that I need. I did a decent amount of prepare work to get everything out at once, but maybe you choose to do one setup a day, or if you get really nice sunny lighting like I've got today, maybe you choose to shoot them all at once and kind of go one at a time. So I don't recommend getting everything out like I've gotten today, but I did want to show you everything that I've utilized. So I've looked at, plates in my house and different bowls and setups and what might look the best on what. I have some stuff in the freezer waiting for me that I pre-prepared. So I'm going to go kind of one step at a time. I'll go as quick as I can, but I want to show you some options in how to use your phone or a camera depending on what you're going to use. So I'm going to start with the popsicles, but then I'm going to actually circle back to those popsicles later because I want to let them melt. So I'm going to start with the popsicles, so I'm going to clear off the rest of the table and kind of move stuff out of the way. So as I go and get set up now to take my photos, I want to look at lighting, I want to look at where the plate is, wipe off any table where any crumbs might be. Every little itty bitty thing is going to show. And they're going to slide around a little bit. I got to control that and decide where I want them to be placed. Do I want there to be space between them if I can get them to link? And this plate has got a curve to it, so they're kind of sliding back in. So I don't have too many options for placement, it looks like. So I'm going to show you on my phone quick. Okay, so I need to be mindful of where my body is because right now I'm kind of blocking the natural light. So I might even need to, move my table as I'm going to photograph some of my things today. Okay, and what I'm going to do first is see how close I can get to the popsicles and have them still be in focus and show like the icing and by icing I mean the crystallization on the popsicles, and see how close I possibly can get and keep them in focus. And with an iPhone you can get pretty close. I'm sure on the newer Androids you can get pretty close too. So I'm changing my angles, looking at how the perspective changes and how the angle changes. So I've taken about 3 pictures so far, making sure I'm holding steady. I'm getting different lighting. So I actually like the lighting that's coming from the back side from the windows because I'm not blocking it anymore. But now I might need to pull my plate because I don't want the actual window to be in my picture. All right, nice. So I feel like I've gotten some good options on my phone. If I were to switch to my camera, I would look for the same things. I put the shortest lens on my camera. So any of you that have nice cameras at home that your parents might let you play with, I'm on A mode, which is aperture priority. But I'm gonna make sure that my ISO is like under 400 if I can, because that'll keep it nice and clear. And I want my aperture to be as low as possible, opening up the lens, which will allow for a very shallow depth of field. And then the tricky part is with a DSLR, notice how I can't get nearly as close to the popsicles and keep everything in focus. All right, so the cool part is, and I will show these on in the video in a little screen grab, but I'm using a really, really shallow depth of field because I'm using a short lens. So it's 1.8 in aperture. So it's actually only focusing on the first popsicle, and everything else is blurred out in the background. So if I wanted to up it a little bit, then I raise up my aperture a little bit before I take that picture. But if you notice, I had to be much further back than I did with my iPhone. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to duplicate the same picture I just took with my camera with my iPhone, and I'm not sure I can do it. So I think I have proved to myself that having an iPhone and having a DSLR, they serve different purposes. I'm gonna actually turn on portrait mode and see if that will do it. But the problem with with portrait mode on the phones is it wants you to be further away. So yeah, I kind of can't recreate the awesome photo that I just took on my DSLR. So I will put those side by side so you can see the difference. I'm gonna do the s'mores bars next. Now, I took a bite out of one, I kind of let them crumble. I artfully kind of stacked them so there'd be some dimension. I don't know how successful this picture is going to be. They taste delicious, but they sort of look like dog food. So we'll see. We'll see how well I can, you know, take the pictures and make them look more appetizing than they are. I am going to move my table a little bit closer to the light. All right, and I'm going to see again how close I can get. To the subject, because I want it really nice and in focus. I want to see the texture of these treats. And I'm getting nice glare from the window to bring in some highlights and shadows. I don't know if I'm gonna love these. I'm not gonna spend a ton of time, but what I want you to think about is watch my posturing, watch my placement of my camera and where I am. Notice that I'm never just like back here, okay? And maybe I want to try to go square on top, but that's tricky too. Now I do have a camera that allows me to see what I'm taking pictures of from above, but it's still tricky to get everything kind of in the place that I want. So you might need a step stool to raise yourself above your plates or your bowls as you go. I'm gonna back up a little bit more. Okay, cool. So I will show you those as well. I did a little bit more of placement and food styling for this one. I even cheated and used chocolate syrup as my melted chocolate because the melted chocolate didn't quite show once I made the s'more. And I also cheated and used my stove to create the burnt marshmallow portion of the s'more. So I'm gonna go ahead and try bringing it closer to the light, but I'm going to bend down and get super close. Cool, all right, and then we can also artfully crop things later on. Okay, so I'm gonna do the same thing with my phone. Get as close as I can. Tap on that toasted marshmallow and really get, you know, the idea that this is a nice s'more. I'm gonna turn it a little bit. Really thinking about texture, lighting, setup, and no distracting backgrounds, okay? If you have like cool placemats or table coverings, you can throw that into the mix too. I'm not sure it's the best one for this particular setup, but adding in some sort of pattern to give you something a little different in the background is a good option too, and you can kind of cheat with placement so that this extends more in your background when you take the picture. You just gotta kind of test things out. You gotta play around and say what looks best, what looks like it was in a, you know, food magazine. All right, I'm gonna bring the jelly beans in, show you something a little simple. If you did something like a candy theme, I suggest thinking about your setup a little bit more carefully because candy doesn't have the same textures for the most part, but maybe I bring in some loose jelly beans as if they, you know, spilled on the table. And I could even like pick some up and try to stack a tower a little bit more. I could be very particular about like where certain colors of jelly beans are. You could get really obsessive with this whole process if you wanted to. All right, So I've put those jelly beans on the table. And notice that I tapped on the bowl of jelly beans. I was getting a big glare from the window and it was getting too bright. But if I tap on the glare, it will soften up the light. So I'm actually gonna bring, let's see, I'm gonna bring this all pretty close to the front edge of the table. And I'm gonna focus on the jelly beans that are down in the front and let the bowl kind of be in the background. So again, tapping to get something in focus and letting the background blur out. Okay, so you can kind of see a little bit how I set that up. You might need to, if you're doing it like I am in the kitchen, you might need to diffuse your light and maybe close the blinds if it is super, super sunny one day, and kind of see if you prefer this lighting change. And maybe take it both ways to see which one you prefer. I still prefer a little bit more natural light, a little bit more shine and highlight, and then therefore also shadows. So I could take it from above too. Oh, I like this a lot. So what's happening is that the jelly beans that are on the top of the bowl are nice and in focus, and then these are blurred out in the background. So it created a really nice effect there. So again, if you do have a DSLR at home, it's totally worth asking your parents if you can play with it and see if you become comfortable with it at all. While the iPhones and the Androids, those newer ones, like I have an 11, it has great cameras and great options on it, you still will run into some limitations. All right, so I've got my ice cream here. I am gonna add whipped cream and try to make it as kind of picturesque as I can. Oh no, it's a little melty. Maybe I won't have whipped cream at all. All right, and so you might have an epic fail like I just did, but I still think what I'm gonna do is take the picture. So I am gonna stick my whipped cream in the freezer for a minute, but I've created sort of this awesome bubbly texture that looks like a science experiment, but why not? Why not try to photograph it and see what happens? So I think you're getting the idea and the concept. Again, I'm getting as close as I can to really get the shine off the chocolate, the texture from the sprinkles, the texture from the scoops of ice cream. And then I might even throw a cherry on there. So is it perfect? No. But I actually like that it's a little different. There we go. So now that I have that cherry on there, I'll go back and do the same thing again. I'm using the blue from the bowl as my background. That's kind of what's guiding the photos here. But again, I'm paying attention to what's in my frame, what's distracting, what might I like or not like. Like, do I want the whole cherry stem? Definitely coming up with options as I go. The more pictures you take, the more options you have later on when we edit, and that way you have better options when you go to turn in. All right, so I've walked you through kind of my process and how I set everything up. It's not perfect. Things can go wrong, as we noticed with the whipped cream, but you have tons of options. So I am going to go back to those popsicles really quick. I want to show you what I'm going to do. So I'm going to stick these in the microwave. All right, they are very soft and mushy, so I'm gonna try to hold still and keep. So my thought process was to allow the pools of the juices to add to the photos. So I'm gonna kind of tip the plate a little bit. And I'm gonna manually kind of shape what I want the popsicles to look like in the photo. So then I can go back with my camera and take new images with these now melty popsicles. And I can even tip the plate if I want to create a little bit of a pooling over on this end. I actually think I like this side better. And I was purposeful in the colors of the popsicles I chose. Notice that they're all warm colors from the rainbow. I knew that they would kind of melt and blend together well. I'm going in close and capturing the texture from the melt. And then I'm going to go in with my phone and get closer too. And you definitely just get new textures and new ideas from manipulating the food. So if you're choosing like warm dishes, like your dinner dishes, make sure you capture those when they're still hot. They tend to look better. Stale food and cool food doesn't have that same glimmer from the warmth, from the steam, whether it's a pasta dish or something like that. So really make sure you're planning ahead. So if you are using dinners and your mom is like maybe a great cook, or your dad, then or maybe it's grandma, make sure you think about the plate that you're going to put your dinner on, how you put the dinner onto the plate, but make sure everything is warm as possible, and then just go, go, go and take those images. Be careful, if you're choosing dinner, it's most likely going to be dark outside, so you do need to think, okay, do I have lamps that I can use as my window lights, my more natural light? You will notice that outdoor light is going to help your pictures look a little bit more professional and have those highlights and shadows that make everything look really appetizing in food photography. So think, 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 plan, 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 and I cannot wait to see your pictures, guys.